recorded at Get a Grip Studios in Toronto, Canada, a Get a Grip management production and in association with the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Financially supported by the good folks at the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, this is Restoring Darkness podcast.
This episode of Restoring Darkness is brought to you by Evluma. If you're serious about contributing to the reduction of light pollution, go to evluma.com, hover over products, and click on Dark Sky Friendly Lighting. Both the OmniMax and AreaMax lights are International Dark Sky Association certified. The warmer color temperatures of the OmniMax reduce the more easily scattered blue wavelengths, which contribute to glare and sky glow. With AreaMax lights, you get full cutoff, which also means no uplight and a significantly reduced contribution to sky glow. And all of Evluma's outdoor lighting product lines come with dimmable drivers for even more control. If your customer is looking for dark sky-friendly fixtures with energy savings while still meeting the demands of decorative lighting, look no further than Evluma. Evluma, illuminating the pursuit of dark skies.
Welcome back, folks, to the Restoring Darkness podcast. Now, to those of you that don't listen to Get a Grip on Lighting, this is Peter.BROWN. He's a longtime friend of the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast and a personal friend of mine as well. I've known him forever. How to describe his career, I'll give you a quick thing. He's pretty much done everything. And today we're going to talk about why the lighting industry has barriers and resistance towards dark sky, darkness-friendly, darkness restoration adoption. How's it going, Peter.BROWN?
It's going great. Good to see you again. I love your hats. I mean, where's Stargaze or whatever that was? I'm a little disappointed that but whatever.
You have the same haircut as me. That's why when everyone complains about the hat, they say they forget their hat. I say, look, I'm bald, man. You got, but I can't say that about you.
Fine. How's that?
There you go. So you're no dark sky expert, and we talked about that before the phone. Before the call, we talked about that on the phone. And we also discussed, how you're more focused on interior illumination and that in your career. But what I wanted to ask you, as a person that's had a long career in lighting in all different avenues and different levels of the channel, where does the resistance to the adoption of darkness-friendly lighting come from?
I was thinking about this morning, and a couple of thoughts. I don't know if it's so much resistance as it is just maybe a more combination of apathy. It's hard to get behind something that kind of comes with a negative connotation. Now, what I mean by that is, instead of saying stargaze or starlights or something that's positive, meaning that you want to see the stars, you want to see everything that's up there, and to get there, you have to have whatever you need as far as artificial light control and whatever. So that may be part of it. I don't know, but it to me, it's always hard to get behind a negative. Where you're talking about controlling the light, and when you say that and you give the connotation that you're going to have less light, then you have a resistance from just the population. And I wrote down a couple of things. I said, what percentage of the U.S. population sleeps outdoors? None.
Zero. Yeah.
Zero.
Statistical zero.
Right. And so for people to get behind it, it's hard for them to grasp it. It's one of those nice to haves, but don't have to have. Has this ever been polled as far as saying how important is this to you? And I would assume it's really low from an importance standpoint. So I think that's part of the reason why the lighting industry doesn't get behind it, because it's just not seeing a lot of push from the ground up, other than for a very small group of people that are concerned about it. And
See, I think you hit the nail on the head there, though, when you talked about stargazing and astronomy. I think the issue is not being articulated correctly. And, when you talk about even the term dark sky, that doesn't really inspire anybody or really point to what the actual problems are with, the transition. See, the International Dark Sky was created a long time ago to address issues with astronomy and stargazers. And they were talking about metal halide and low pressure sodium and high pressure sodium lights. What's happened since then is that the LED lighting bonanza has made the light pollution issue significantly worse. And do you think it's more of an issue where I find one of the biggest problems in anything in the modern area is the failure of people to admit they were wrong. And do you think that the problem here is that if the lighting industry gets behind, this is why I say darkness restoration, if the lighting industry gets behind darkness restoration, does it mean that everyone made a big mistake and we did everything wrong? And is that what's causing sort of the barrier to take off in your mind?
It may be part of it. When you were talking, I thought of why not say dark earth, light sky? I mean, rather than dark sky. I mean, because that's what you want. You want the earth to be dark so you can see the light in the sky. So it's just I think part of it is just the way in which it's been presented, and it's hard for people to get behind that. And so, but as far as I think the industry in general just it seems to have a negative connotation. And what I mean by that is, as far as a practical standpoint, if you go and put in lighting, for example, let's just say you have poor lighting in a parking lot for a school district and the schools butt up to residential. And all of a sudden you put in LEDs, they're glare. Now you've got to go up and put on some sort of dividers or screens or something on the fixtures to cut the light pollution into the homes. So that general connotation of that, you could say, extra adder or whatever you want to call it on projects doesn't help the overall situation. And it's justified. I mean, people, all of a sudden you've got light glaring in your windows at night. You don't want that. So I think the other part of it is when people think of dark and light from a safety standpoint. I mean, I can remember, oh gosh, now what, 15, 20 years ago, converting HID parking garages over to fluorescents, and people wanting to put controls and sensors on them. And the the most pushback was from women saying, when I walk off the elevator on a floor, I want to see light. I don't feel comfortable when I come off, even if I know I'm going to step off and the lights are going to come on. That immediate impression is I'm not safe. And so I think that again, dealing with people that don't spend a lot of time looking at the sky and so on, it's all of those things put together.
Say the word safety is I hate it now. It has completely lost its meaning. The word safety is used to justify more waste and more like so. What the way we handled the parking garage issue, and I want to go back to dark skies for a second, is we actually put sensors in the foyer of the elevator lobbies, so that turned on the lights before you got into the garage. But long story short,
Right.
with that, is that this idea that as soon as someone says they don't feel safe, all bets are off on anything. And it's a very difficult question. The balance of safety versus the pros of darkness and darkness restoration. Darkness restoration always loses to the what did Vox Populi Vox Dei, the voice of the population is the voice of God. People complain, or the people that seem to want, keyhole to keyhole lit streets and all that seem to be, significantly more powerful than the people that are looking at practical solutions. Going back to your parking lot, which borders onto a residential area, what I'm always trying to tell the lighting industry, Peter, is that adoption of darkness restoration and preservation ideas means we sell more lights. So the solution to that problem is lower poles and more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't and the other thing is that the biggest opportunity in front of us in the lighting industry is the outdoor lighting play. The question I have for you, and I want you to answer this honestly. Do you believe that light pollution actually is pollution?
Ooh, um, well, that's a very good question. I just because I'm hesitating, I would say that it's not. But the more you think about it, compared to what was there before, then you'd have to say it is. But you know, from somebody growing up in rural Canada, it's like it just I think that's part of it too. Is we're all a sum of our experiences, and
Hmm.
it was never an issue. And fortunately, where we are now in Phoenix, we get to see that because it's probably one of the best cities for lack of light pollution in the overall scheme of things, just because of the number of observatories and stuff within Arizona. But I think you're right. I think you're if there's no conscious effort, I love that idea of shorter poles and more poles because you're right. That's the question is the other thing I wrote down was, can you matte black every artificial surface out there so
Yeah.
the light doesn't reflect up? No,
Yeah.
I mean, so the practicality of things just isn't there. So at best, you're going to have, you know, I don't know. Is there a way in which you could get a strong enough association that said we're only for utilities for rebate programs, we're only going to incentivize fixtures that have this dark sky component? Maybe that's one way to go after it.
So problems that don't have their terminology set out correctly are very difficult to solve. The jargon in the dark sky movement is not set yet properly, and one of the things that I think that could be helpful from the people like the International Dark Sky Association is to really set up the way we talk about this as an industry. But you're constantly referencing dark skies, and then the word darkness carries with it a sense of foreboding, and so that the problem becomes largely intractable. But like you said, rebate programs, or you have these coastal areas. Obviously, these problems start being solved locally and based on certain priorities locally. So Oregon coastlines, perhaps maybe they'll adopt some of this sort of thing. But how do we, or are you interested? That's a better question. Are you, as a lighting professional, are you interested in taking on this challenge with the industry?
No.
Yeah,
No, no, no. I mean,
exactly.
I, I come, I think somebody said a great line last year at Light Fair and talking about circadian lighting and saying that circadian lighting is a lot more based on emotion. And unless you get an emotional pitch or process or whatever for it, you're going to have a hard time overcoming the financials of it. And so maybe when it comes to light sky or stargaze or whatever you want to call it on a positive standpoint, that you play on an emotional vent and not so much any kind of ROI and so on. And so I don't know how that would be marketed, if you will, but it certainly is. And I'm just thinking of like the Northern Lights. I mean, you've seen them.
Sure.
They have these great photography tours where you go up there, and of course you're in the middle of nowhere, and it's totally dark, and so the experience is fabulous. But you know, to I I guess it's almost like doing a before and after. You'd have to take some pretty good sized project where you had poor lighting, outdoor lighting, and then you did an after shot with much better lighting and showed the sky as a result. I don't know if that's a practical way of doing it. You probably have to have a really big project to do
So
that.
you're
I don't
looking
know.
for metrics. I love it. You're looking for metrics, and that's so intractable in this realm because even the idea of darkness is antithetical to metrics. Like you think about it, like in your
No,
mind when we think about it. Now, Mont Magantic, who Remy Boucher, who I had on the program in the last episode, he has metrics of that his the Dark Sky Park in Quebec, and they have the province on board, they have the local municipalities on board, and the residents are largely on board. So it's a local success story. But yes, it's very difficult to one, gain, the average citizen's emotions into this, and two, there isn't any real financial payback. So you have to pay more and you get less light. That is so difficult for the lighting industry to sell.
And you see so much more benefit from seeing the stars in a rural area where you hardly have any light. So it's to be able to come up with some way to have required light levels and yet be able to see the sky, uh, and to pay for it where there's no payback. I think that's a very hard venue to go down. Now, I think part of it is coming back to what we talked about at the beginning was the connotation of dark versus light. So if you go to starlight or something from a positive standpoint, maybe it's too late to do that because the connotation of dark sky is so embedded in people's minds, they're going to go to that no matter what you say now.
It's
So I think
impossible.
that
It's like Fahrenheit for Americans, or miles. It's inches instead of centimeters. It's almost impossible to get out of once these systems have a momentum that is very difficult to sort of sideline in that respect. Even though that you're talking about the term dark sky, or nobody even knows. If you get a bunch of lighting professionals around the table, and I start the conversation off with, we're talking about darkness preservation and restoration, immediately everyone will talk about dark skies. That's it. Immediately they will not use the term darkness restoration. They will talk about dark skies, and that's so problematic for us. The IDA tries to get over this, and the IES, by talking about responsible outdoor lighting. And that's very sort of obtuse. Like, what does that mean? For a prison yard, it means being lit up like a prison yard. That's responsible, right? For city streets, if you go down to a bylaw office and what's responsible outdoor lighting, they're going to tell you as much light as possible. You go to a police
I
station,
think
same
I
thing.
think the only way to overcome this from a practical standpoint is you have to do a reset. And so maybe the way you do this is you start to have destination locations, whether it's in this country, your country, wherever, that says, come to here, here all the things you can do. Oh, and by the way, we have a stargaze area. And so you slowly start
Well,
to
we have that
change
in
people's mindset.
Flagstaff in Montmagontic. There's lots of dark sky preserves. Arizona is probably the most popular destination in
Mhm.
in America. Canada largely is a dark sky park. I mean, I would say 90% of it is. There, I make a
Oh,
joke. There's
at
a dark
least.
sky. Yeah, there's a dark sky viewing area in Eastern Ontario, and it has all these signs. You're in the dark sky area, but really, if you just keep driving north, that area extends
Yeah,
for till the roads end, and and then after that you
and
get in a
beyond.
canoe and you keep going. So the Canadians are at an advantage when it comes to being able to view these things. But this is the biggest single financial opportunity in front of the lighting industry. It means that every single light fixture that's outside in the world practically is at play, but we still see resistance. And I don't understand why the IES and the other lighting and associations are not just jumping on this thing and saying, yes, let's get behind this. The problem is solvable. We have the technology, we have the knowledge. It's not like we don't have the ability to do it. And so I don't
I
see the resistance.
I think there's more resistance than more push towards it.
Yeah, for
In other
sure.
words, you, you've got resistance in the absence of a push to go there, and so you've got to come up with ways to push it to overcome that resistance. Because otherwise, it's just going to default to the way it has been, which is the resistance. So without finding the positives, you're not going to overcome it.
Well, what are the
I
positives
mean,
in your mind? You talked about stargazing and astronomy, which is the default again of all anyone you talk to about this issue. There's also wildlife. Circadian is another one. You know, that's an interesting point about circadian, and I'm going to ask you about this. You've been following, the the industry is pushing so hard in the direction of circadian, and I don't think there's going to be any serious adoption of vertical lighting in buildings, except for new buildings, perhaps, where designers are heavily involved. But in the existing building stock we have, all this talk of 200 lux on the vertical plane coming at you and all. I as a lighting guy that's sold a million deals, not a million, but tons of lighting deals in his life, and you yourself, do you see the average 55,000 square foot factory with an office putting the lights on the side of their factory or
No,
in any type
no.
of.
The only place I've seen where it is going to work is in some form or another in 24/7 healthcare, where you've got people in an environment for 24/7, and you can show positive financial benefits as far as less falls, uh, whatever things can be shown from a financial standpoint that's very trackable because you're in a medical environment. So much of that's tracked and accounted for. But
But you
it's
know what? Here, here's
it's
here, here here's the thing on that. Look, Dr. Mark Ray, in no uncertain terms, told me that the that there are specific areas that they know where circadian is extremely effective at helping people, and usually these people are compromised in some way. But my belief is that forget about circadian, forget about trying to. Everybody thinks that they can. Um, it's much easier to subtract for benefit or subtract negative and then have a positive or have less negative pressure than it is to make an intervention and make something positive. Okay, so an example is from, and we're going to go back to Dark Skies, Restoring Darkness listeners. I'm going to get you there in a second. No, but an example of like circadian lighting the only benefit from circadian lighting is improving sleep. All the other benefits that they talk about are not from actually the lights, they're actually from the improved sleep, right? So the light tables that they talk about for the Alzheimer's patients who are sitting like this with their head down a lot, those those that circadian stimulus helps them sleep better. You know, the cueing where Dr. Wilkerson had very warm, low-level lights in the NICU lab come on very slowly, and at whatever 2,000 Kelvin, and slowly wake up the mothers and babies. And when the nurses came in at wake up time, everybody was already awake breastfeeding, as opposed to shake, hey, it's time to wake up, the lights are on full, and you have this chaos in the morning. So what we're doing is subtracting negatives that we know are bad. You don't want to walk into a room and flick the lights on when people are sleeping, right? We subtract that. We subtract we improve sleep. But this idea that the general population is going to adopt circadian-friendly lighting systems to gain 2% advantage, and we're going to calculate that on the payroll, is wrong. But by the same principle, if we are subtracting 80% of the light that's wasted outdoors in terms of sky glow, it's just going out into the universe, and we're subtracting the spillage that's going into someone's yard and some kid's window, that's reducing his sleep quality. If we know that if we subtract that, it's good, right? And it's like
sure.
remove flicker. Oh, that's good. Remove it. Try to insert something that's going to give you a kick up or is like a cup of coffee. That's very difficult to measure, whereas the subtraction we know works. And if we get into, if we start urging the industry into wasting less light going off into the universe, like that doesn't have an actual target and isn't planned properly, that's a good subtraction. It saves energy.
So
Yes.
I think you just came up with a marketing strategy, and that is that you show 2 or 3 areas in the lighting industry where subtraction is good, and then you talk about dark sky as far as removing unwanted light, so that you tie it in with the other positives. Just when it sits by itself, it has a really hard time.
There's a lack of coherency in the movement. And in the darkness restoration and preservation, there's a lack of coherency, and then you have people talking about fish predation, and other people talking about insects, and some people, astronomers, talking about that. There needs to be some coherency around the issue. Um, one of my points is, though, I think the lighting industry should stop pushing the circadian position, back away from that, because I really don't think it's going to be adopted. I don't see a mass adoption strategy across the economy, and move to the darkness issue, which the circadian issue has no evidence. There's no proof. Everybody's speculating. Oh, we have this study. Now, there's no hard proof. There's no hard proof except for in certain instances. But we know that darkness restoration has a positive impact, improves sleep, helps wildlife, reduces, when it's done right, maintains safety, doesn't increase it, but it maintains safety if done correctly, and it sells a ton of light fixtures, way more light fixtures and poles.
So let's talk about that as far as to the average rep agency, distributor, contractor within the distribution channel of lighting. What percentage of outdoor lighting makes up their mix? I don't know the answer to that.
99.99% is non-dark sky friendly lighting. For sure.
Right, but how much outdoor lighting is their mix? In other words, if they're selling 50% of their stuff they're selling every day is outdoor lighting, then they're going to get behind it quicker than if it's only 2%. I don't know what the number is.
Oh, I would say anecdotally, it's probably, for me and for maybe Greg, I would say just off the cuff, it's probably about 30%, 20% of our projects.
Really?
Yeah, I would say that we do a lot of outdoor lighting. Yep, we do, on buildings, wall packs, and stuff like that. But here's the problem, okay? I have never in my career sold a dark sky friendly light. Well, I sold one to myself, or a couple to myself. Okay? But I mean, when you go to talk to someone about it, it's antithetical to what they're trying to achieve with the lighting. Right? So what you need to do is we're going to put less light and you pay a lot more. Right? And, and so it's very difficult. It's a difficult sell to the average, person. How important then is regulation? That would be the next question. Does it need to be regulated?
I think politically that'd be a hard thing to sell. Again, if you were out to go out and do a poll and say how important is A, B, C, D, and have 10 things, I would think dark sky would be just like climate change is on the bottom, 10, 20% of what people are concerned about.
I don't want to get into an argument about people's opinions on climate change. I prefer the word pollution, because we can target a type of pollution, and then work to fix it. Climate change is a mixed bag of unsolvable problems that are completely intractable, right? So, the idea of living in Canada is fundamentally based on natural gas and oil. Like, you can't, at this point in time, there is no technological solution to living in Canada without natural gas. Like, it's not possible. People can't. Every home, in millions of homes, are piped with natural gas and heated with natural gas. And to change that infrastructure is enormous, especially when they don't know what they're going to change it to. To replace
heat pumps.
Yeah, I mean, my house is heated with a heat pump. But listen, okay, so in my jurisdiction, 90% of the electricity is clean, nuclear electricity, nuclear power. Well, whatever your opinion on, you can go to these topics, right? Yeah. But it's nuclear, okay? And so my heat pump is simply electrically generated energy. It's not geothermal, okay? So people, they call it geothermal. Geothermal only happens in Iceland when there's a volcano there, right? Heat pumps use a lot of electricity to crank the heat out of the ground. So it's not necessarily a good solution. Electric baseboard heaters would be a lot more cost effective than heat pumps would be. And you could just install them. But anyway, off topic. If we look at the solution, we have the technology to solve this problem. That's my concern. Climate change is very, we're going to come up with the technologies, we're going to make it happen, we're going to invent new things. Okay, That's good. But with the darkness issue, it's not a matter of engineering. It's not a matter of um, it's not a matter of developing anything. It's a matter of deployment. That's it.
Or the will to deploy it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like it just matter exactly the will to deploy it. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
we have the controls. I mean, you could get really like if you had a bird migration, you could reduce the outdoor lighting on the streets of a city and lower the Kelvin temperature. You could do all manner of things. You could, if there was an emergency, you could increase the Kelvin temperature and the light output at an intersection if you needed to. Like the
So,
technology is
so,
all there.
so I think that comes back to just as putting it on an umbrella, call it sustainability. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of okay. So
Exactly.
there is a small number of very large companies that have the financial resources and the will to see themselves and present themselves to their customer base as sustainable and in doing something like this. They could financially do it and it wouldn't hurt them, and they would garner some PR and whatever from doing it. But that's just like IoT controls or circadian lighting, whatever. It's for a very small part of the marketplace, and so you could have a city block where everything's great, but all around it, it's not.
Yes, but
As
that, yeah,
far as
incremental. Listen, problems are solved incrementally. There's no, there's no mass solution to any problem. That doesn't exist. This idea that you can snap your fingers and everyone's driving electric cars tomorrow. That's not how it goes. Um,
Mhm.
but so if we can improve incrementally, so what if one block is done and then another block is done and then another block is done? What my thing is, the other thing too is even the controls aspect of the lighting industry is pushing in the interior, pushing in the interior environment, looking for a use case, looking for a business case. You and I both know that we accomplished 99% of the energy savings with stupid, dumb, past dual technology aux sensors. There's no energy
Yep.
play for these extra controls. That problem's already been solved. They're trying to create these other use cases. Outdoor lighting is again the most obvious place for advanced lighting controls. Cities would have the employees they could train to manage the lighting, whereas the average small factory doesn't want to have a person on their lighting controls desk now, but a municipality could. So that again, the controls argument is way more suitable to outdoor lighting than it is to indoor lighting at all, in all aspects.
So let's go back to you said the only project you sold is to yourself. What are the top three reasons why the end user doesn't want to do it? We talked about the resistance of the lighting industry. Let's talk about the resistance of end users who would have to pay for it. What do you find are the top three reasons why people don't want to do it at this point?
It's not even that they don't want to do it; it's that it sounds ridiculous. Like you've done a lighting project, right? Forget about color temperature, lumens, and all this sort of stuff. A lighting project goes wrong after it's done when there's less light. That's the bottom line,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like
Unless it's so overlit to start with, but
yes,
yeah,
but you know what I'm talking about. You go into a factory. Oh, we're changing the lights. Why do we have less light after we change the lights? You're gonna have a riot on your hands. You always have to deliver them a perceived increase in light or an actual increase in light. Usually, the perceived one is less foot candles horizontally, more vertically. Light up the factory walls, and everybody thinks it's brighter. But you actually maybe have less light overall, or less horizontal foot candles. You've done it back in the linear fluorescent days with T5s. You would put up that T5 fixture. You'd have less light below the light fixture and more light on the vertical surface, and everyone thought it was brighter. So the idea of going to a customer and saying, "Hey, what we want to do is we're going to address your outdoor lighting by giving you more light fixtures and less light and a lower Kelvin temperature." The customer say, "Why would I do that?"
so it doesn't pass the sniff test.
Well, this is why it's not the sniff test. It's hard to sit down with someone and say, I need your attention. What's that? I want you to think, I want you to give me 7 hours over your time over the next 6 weeks for us to discuss making your factory dark sky friendly. That conversation has never happened in the history of the lighting industry yet. Okay? That doesn't happen. The guy's going, I don't have time for this. The birds can fly over there. I'm trying to make the widgets in my factory. So those conversations are impossible. This is where municipalities and governments absolutely have to take the lead. This is where you have to see the street lights being lowered, more of them put in, cut off wall packs, particularly in new developments. Like, you ever driven through a new development before it's built? It's disgustingly gross because they put the street lights in first, right? And none of the houses are built. And basically, it's a football field. You can see everything in the open land where the streetlights are. Have you ever done that? Take a drive through a new development where they put the streetlights in first. There's an electrical feed at each thing. The streetlights are all in, and they all turn on. And you look, all it is a vast wash of light covering the entire field. No matter if the streets curve or not or whatever they've done, they're wasting so many lumens lighting up people's yards and then onto houses and all this sort of stuff. If you were to, in my opinion, the place to start would be to make dark sky friendly new developments. That would be the place to start.
Or what if you were able to come up with fixtures that were totally customizable as far as the footprint of light they put out instead of the 1 through 5 settings that we now have?
That's where the controls
So,
play comes in.
correct. As far as the control of the light, not the what light is on or not, but actually where the light goes.
For
So
sure.
it's customized because to your point, because it'd be fascinating to know what percentage of light pollution is from street lighting versus buildings.
I think most of the sky glow a lot of it comes from vertical signs as well, like advertising signs and all that. That's an interesting question, more for the IDA than for this guy. But what I'm saying is that I think you're right. I mean, fixtures that can be commissioned to reduce the angle of output of light, lower the Kelvin temperature, and then you have the controls package on it. If there's an emergency, then all the lights come on to full and open wide, and you have massive illumination in the area. And then they go back down to their, regular low Kelvin temperature, more where you need it light on the sidewalk and the road as opposed to everybody's lawn and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what I'm saying to you. This is not an engineering issue. It's not a product development issue. It's a product development issue, but it's not an engineering issue. And it's not a research and development issue. The technology exists. I think what we need more than anything else, and maybe we'll close with this, Peter, I'll get your thoughts on it. We need the environmental movement to get behind this issue.
The other interesting play to this may be that all of a sudden, forever, utilities have said, we don't care. We'd love to sell power at night because we're imbalanced. We do all this power supply in the daytime. We don't do anything at night. Maybe with electric vehicle charging at night, they'll get behind having less light and offering rebates on night lighting.
Well, you didn't answer my question about the environmentalists. The plastics in the ocean crowd, the climate change crowd, what's that Swedish girl's name? I think she might be an adult now. Greta Thunberg, that kind of a crowd to get behind it. I mean, we could be counting the dollar. We wouldn't be able to count the money as fast as it came in.
Again, I think you come back to have to show, you've got to show, as you said, a positive versus a negative. So you've got to show, here's what it looked like, here's what it looks like now. Here's this huge patch of plastic in the ocean and now it's gone. Whatever it is that, and as you said, we'll kind of go all the way back to the beginning again. there's such a mishmash of messaging going on within the industry that it's hard. It basically has to really focus on one message so that everybody gets it and sticks with a narrative. Otherwise, it's just always muddled. It's hard to focus on something.
We'll call it at that, Peter. Hey, if you made it to the end, this one, I promised you guys it'd be a half an hour. It went 40 minutes. Peter and I get on tangents from time to time. But listen, out there, all you lighting professionals, Nailed is trying to create some industry alignment on the issue. That's step one of our 6 strategies for darkness preservation and restoration. You can find it on nailed.org, or you can look for all of our stuff on social media. Industry alignment. That's right. So we're creating an educational program based on that, and we're trying to bring in all the other frontline, I hate the word frontline too now, but frontline lighting practitioners. So agents, controls, integrators, contractors, and all the people that are on the front lines to educate them. That's a starting point for this issue. So look for that coming out soon. Probably 3 to 6 months from when this episode goes out, we'll be releasing that educational program. We're hoping that all frontline, again, I hate the word frontline, but any frontline lighting practitioners will receive the same education. That's right. And then it'll be unique. There'll be a module unique to the agents or a module unique to the contractors so that everybody is talking about the same thing. Thank you for listening.
Look no further for dark sky friendly products than Evluma. Since its first product launch, Evluma has carried 1 or more International Dark Sky Association certified models. If your customer cares about light pollution, suggest the OmniMax with shielding or the AreaMax with full cutoff to reduce uplight and glare. Evluma, illuminating the pursuit of darkness.